Next we're going to look at sine and cosine in a right triangle. So sine and cosine in a right triangle. So I guess we'll start with what is a triangle, a right triangle. A right triangle is a triangle that has one right angle. We can label these sides A, B, and C. The longest side of the triangle is always called the hypotenuse. The two others are called the legs. If I have an angle, we'll put it here and call it theta. What I have is that sine of theta is going to be the opposite over the hypotenuse. So when I say opposite, I mean look at this angle. Which side of the triangle is opposite of it? That would be A. And then which side is adjacent to it? That would be B. C is always going to be the hypotenuse. So sine of theta is always the opposite side over the hypotenuse. In this case, that's going to be A over C. Cosine of my angle. Cosine of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. So here's the adjacent, that would be B over my hypotenuse, so B over C. So anytime you have an angle in a right triangle, sine is always the opposite side over the hypotenuse, and cosine of this angle is adjacent over hypotenuse. So let's do some examples. I want to solve for x in the given triangle. So I have a right triangle here. My angle measure is pi over 3, and I know this length is 10. Here's x. In this triangle, can I find the relation between the pi over 3, this x, and 10? Well, compared to the pi over 3, I see that this leg is adjacent. This one will be the opposite, this is the adjacent. So I'm talking about the adjacent, and I have the hypotenuse. So which of these two relates the adjacent to the hypotenuse? That would be cosine. So what that tells me is that cosine of pi over 3 is going to be equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So x over 10. I just need to solve this for x. Multiply both sides by 10. I'll get x is 10 times the cosine of pi over 3. What is the cosine of pi over 3? Go back to your unit circle. Here's our unit circle. We see that pi over 3 is here. Cosine is my x-coordinate, so 1/2. So I get 10 times 1/2, which is 5. That tells me that x is equal to 5. Okay. Let's try another example with this. Let's say I have this right triangle. Here's my angle. My angle this time is going to be pi over 6. I'm given that this length is 3, and I want to know what's the hypotenuse. So in this problem, I have an angle, and I have a leg and a hypotenuse. And I'm trying to figure out which of these relations can correspond to these three things. Well, let's see. I have an angle. In comparison to this angle, this leg is the opposite. So I'm involving the opposite to the angle and the hypotenuse to the angle. So opposite and hypotenuse, that involves sine. So I know that the sine of pi over 6 is equal to opposite, here that's 3, over hypotenuse, here that's x. Now I'm going to try to solve for x. Let's start with, what is sine of pi over 6? Let's see. Go back to your unit circle here. Or you can use your calculator, that's fine. So pi over 6 is here. Sine is your y-coordinate. The y-coordinate there is 1/2. So I know that 1/2 is equal to 3 over x. To solve for x, I'm going to multiply both sides by x. So I get 1/2 x is 3. And now I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of the 1/2. So x is 6. So whenever you have a right triangle where you have unknowns, just look to say, am I involving a sine or a cosine? We're about to learn about more of the trig functions, but which ones am I involving? Plug in what you know and then solve for the variable. So solve for x or y or whatever the variable is.